Okay, we are on chapter 5. And I'm going to try a different screen mode today. See how this goes. Okay. Chapter 5. We were up at sunrise the next morning, and that day returned to the village where we had left our outfit. We arrived at the village just before dark and pitched our camp under a great banyan tree. The next morning, Emil greeted us, and we all began asking questions. He said, "I do not wonder at your questions, and I will gladly answer all that I can at this time, leaving others until you have gone further into our work. In talking to you as I am, you fully realize that I am using your language to convey to you the one great underlying principle of our belief. When all know the truth, it is rightly interpreted. Truly, it is not one and all from the same source. ? When all know the truth and it is rightly interpreted, truly is it not one and all from the same source? Are we not all one with the universal mind substance, God? Are we not all one great family? Is not every child, everyone born, no matter what the caste or creed, a member of this great family? You ask if we believe death is avoidable. Let me answer in the words of the Siddha. The human body is built up from the individual cell, like the bodies of plants and animals, whom we love to call younger and less evolved brothers. The individual cell is a minute microscopic unit of the body. By the process of growth and division repeated many times, this minute nucleus of a cell unit results at last in a complete human being built up of almost countless millions of cells. These body cells specialize for certain different functions, but they retain in the main the characteristics of the individual cell whence they arose. This individual cell may be looked upon as a torchbearer of animate life. It passes on from the generation to generation the latent fires of God, the vitality of all living beings, with an unbroken ancestry reaching back to the time when life first appeared on this planet. This individual cell has the property, of unlimited youth. But what about the group cells called the body? Just go back a little bit here. This is interesting stuff, individual cell. So this individual cell, I wonder what the synonym would be. I'm just curious about that here. The group cells arose from the individual cell repeated many times, retaining its individual characteristics, one of which is the latent fire of life or eternal youth. The group cells or body function as guardian of the individual cell only during the short span of life as you know it now. Now I'm wondering if this is what we would call the permanent atom, the physical permanent atom. The most ancient of our teachers by inspirational means perceived the truth of the fundamental unity of life reactions in plant and animal. We can well imagine these teachers beneath the spreading banyan tree addressing their pupils as follows. Look at this giant tree, a vital process going on our brother. This tree and in ourselves is fundamentally the same. Behold the leaves and the buds at the tips of the oldest banyan, how young they are, young as the seeds from which the giant sprang to life, into life. The life reactions of plant and man being alike, man can certainly profit by the experience of the plant. As the leaves and the buds at the tips of the branches of the oldest banyan are as young as the seed whence it sprang, even so the group cells in man forming his body need not gradually lose their vitality and die, but may grow young and evergreen as the ovum or individual cell itself. Indeed, there is no reason why your body should not grow young, as vital as the vital seed from which it sprang. The ever-spreading banyan, always a symbol of everlasting life, does not die except through accident. No natural law of decay, no old age process seems to exist within the banyan tree to affect injuriously the vital energy of its cells. Oh, this is incredible. The same is true of the human form divine. Wow. I hope I hope we picked up on that. Excuse me. That's really incredible. This banyan tree connection here to the spiritual body. It just makes sense. No natural law of decay, no old age process seems to exist within the banyan tree to affect injuriously the vital energy of its cells. So as long as that vital energy is flowing, then what's to, why age? How about this? That's why people seem to look younger these days. There's more vital energy, period. And we know, and then in this connection, we can say this is probably true based on, an understand. Well, I'm going to say understanding, but there's been more energy come into the system in certain years, and that was known by those who were here. And you can call it the Christ energy came down, and the will energy came down, and it allowed for this process to move on. So that's why we look younger than the previous generations, essentially. There's no natural law of death or decay for man except through accident. No inevitable old age process exists within his body or group cells. Nothing that can gradually paralyze the cells. And this is what we know as the second law of thermodynamics, essentially. Death is then an avoidable accident. Disease is, above all, dis-ease, absence of ease or shanti, sweet, joyous peace of the spirit reflected through the mind and the body. Senile decay, which is the common experience of man, is but an expression that covers his ignorance of cause, certain disease conditions of mind and body. Even accidents are preventable by appropriate mental attitude, says the Siddha. The tone of the body may be so preserved that it may naturally resist with ease infectious and other disease, like plague or influenza. The Siddha may swallow germ and never develop disease at all. And hold on a second, I am going to look up what Siddha is. Okay, Siddha means one who is accomplished. It refers to perfected masters who have achieved a high degree of physical as well as spiritual perfection or enlightenment. So it is the perfect word. And we find that usually the perfect words are used in connection with these high beings. The tone of the body may be so preserved that it may naturally resist infectious and other disease like plague or influenza. The Siddha may swallow germs and never develop disease at all. Remember that youth is God's seed of love planted in the human form divine. Indeed, youth is the divinity within man. Youth is the life spiritual, the life beautiful. It is only life that lives and loves, the one life eternal. Age is unspiritual, mortal, ugly, and unreal. Fear thoughts, pain thoughts, and grief thoughts create the ugliness called old age. Joyous thoughts, love thoughts, and ideal thoughts create the beauty called youth. Age is but a shell within which lies the gem of reality, the jewel of youth. Practice acquiring the consciousness of childhood. Visualize the divine child within. Before falling asleep, suggest to your consciousness, I now realize that there is within me a spiritual joy body, ever young, ever beautiful. I have beautiful spiritual mind, eyes, nose, mouth, skin, the body of the divine infant, which now tonight is perfect. And repeat this affirmation and meditate upon it quietly while falling asleep. Upon rising in the morning, suggest to yourself aloud, well, dear, addressing yourself by name, there is a divine alchemist within. By the spiritual power of these affirmations, during the night, a transmutation takes place, and the unfolding from within, the spirit has saturated this spiritual body and spiritual temple. The inner alchemist has caused dead and worn out cells to fall, and the gold of new skin to appear with perpetual health and loveliness. Truly divine love and demonstration is eternal youth. The divine alchemist is within my temple, constantly coining new and beautiful baby cells. The spirit of youth is within my temple, this human form divine, and all is well. Om Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace. Now this master's telling the student to do the affirmations. I don't, the master does not have to do the affirmations. And it's interesting because, that is an early on the path kind of thing that we're even seeing here in this book. If we follow the trail of breadcrumbs from the beginning, I think we see in the beginning this need for affirmations to make things positive from a negative, coming from a negative standpoint. We balance the scale and then we go to positivity. And this is all part of it. Learn to smile in the sweet way of a child. A smile from the soul is spiritual relaxation. A real smile is a thing of true beauty, the artistic work of the inner ruler, immortal. It is well to affirm, I think a kind thought for all the world. May all the world be happy and blessed. Affirm before, taking up the work for the day. Within me there is a perfect form, the divine, the form divine. I am now all that I desire to be. I visualize daily my beauty being until I breathe it into expression. I visualize daily my beauty being until I breathe it into expression. I visualize daily my beautiful being. I am a divine child. All my needs are being now and forever supplied. Learn to thrill yourself. Affirm infinite love fills my mind and thrills my body with its perfect life. Make everything bright and beautiful about you. Cultivate a spirit of humor. Enjoy the sunshine. Kip Mousy, that's how I say it. Kip Mousy music. He makes Shakti music, and it's amazing, beautiful music. And I used to listen to his lectures. He has, he does some video as well, and his mantra, which I borrowed for quite a while, was his affirmation was, I'm merging with eternal oneness. And so that was one that was borrowed from him. So it's interesting to see here that we have these affirmations. You understand that I am quoting from the teaching of Siddha. They are the oldest teachers known, and their teaching antedates all history by thousands of years. They went about teaching the people and showing them the better way of life even before man knew the simple arts of civilization. It is from their teaching that the system of rulers sprang. But these rulers soon wandered away from the realization that it was God expressing through them, thinking it was themselves, the personal, who were doing the work. They lost sight of the spiritual and brought forth the personal or material, forgetting that all comes from the one source, God. These rulers' personal concepts gave rise to the great separations in belief and the wide diversity of thought. This is our concept of the Tower of Babel. The Siddha have preserved throughout the ages the true inspirational methods of God expressing through mankind and through all his creations, realizing that God is all and that it is God manifesting through all. They have never deviated from this teaching, thus they have preserved the great fundamental truth. Yeah, it's taken me a little while to get used to this. I think now that we got to the end of this chapter, I'm going to try to go back to this old way because I'm having a hard time reading what's actually on these pages. Yeah, there's one of the Upanishads sounds exactly like what he was just explaining here. The gods thought that it was their victory. They took credit for it, and they did not understand that it was God. In that case, it was Brahma. They did not understand that it was Brahma that was the spirit that was making having them causing them great wonder or something. They couldn't figure out Brahma. It's a nice read, but it incorporates that teaching there. All right, chapter 6. The man we had left in the village to observe Emil joined us here and reported that he had conversed with Emil until nearly 4 o'clock of the day he was to keep his appointment with us. So if you don't remember, right now we're back at to where he dematerialized and materialized his body elsewhere. Then Emil said he was about to keep his appointment. His body immediately became inactive and reposed upon the couch as though asleep. It was in this position until about 7 o'clock in the evening, when it gradually became more indistinct and disappeared. It was at this time in the evening that Emil came to us in the lodge at the little village. We had made a number of short trips from our headquarters with either Jast or Nepro accompanying us, and in every instance, they had shown their sterling qualities and worth. On one of these trips, Emil, Jast, and Nepro accompanied us to the village where a temple called the Silence Temple, the temple not made by hands, is located. This village contains the temple and the houses of the attendants and is located on the former site of a village that had been nearly destroyed by the ravages of wild animals and pestilence. We were told that the masters visited this spot and found a few inhabitants left of about 3,000 population. They ministered to them, and the ravages of the wild animals and pestilence ceased. A few villagers vowed that if they were spared, they would, from that time on, devote their lives to God, serving him in any way he chose. The masters left, and when they returned later, they found the temple erected and attendants in charge. The temple is very beautiful, situated on an elevation overlooking a wide expanse of country. It is about 6,000 years old, is made of white marble, and has never needed repairs, as a piece chipped off replaces itself, as was proven by members of our party. Emil said, this is called the Temple of Silence, the place of power. Silence is power. For when we reach the place of silence in mind, we have reached the place of power, the place where all is one, the one power, God. Be still and know that I am God. Diffused power is noise. Concentrated power is silence. When through concentration, drawing to a center, we have brought all our forces into one point of force, we have contacted God in silence. We are one with him and hence one with all power. This is the heritage of man, and I and the Father are one. There is but one way to be one with the power of God, and that is consciously to contact God. This cannot be done in the without or in the outside, for God manifests from within. The Lord is in his holy temple, but all the earth keeps silent before him. Only as we turn from the without or outside to the silence of the within can we hope to make conscious union with God. We will realize that his power is for us to use, and we will use it at all times. Then we will know that we are one with his power. Then will humanity be understood. Man will learn to let go of self-delusions and vanities. He will realize his ignorance and littleness. Then will he be prepared to learn. He will realize that the proud cannot be taught. He will know that only the humble can perceive truth. His feet will feel the firm rock. He will no longer stumble. He will be poised in decision. To realize that God is the only power, substance, and intelligence may be confusing at first. And here we're talking about one, right? This is one. But when man does realize the true nature of God and brings him forth into active expression, he will use this power at all times. He will know that he consciously contacts his power at all times, when he eats, when he runs, when he breathes, or when he does the great work before him. Man has not learned to do the greater works of God because he has not realized the greatness of God's power and has not known that God's power is for man's use. God does not hear us through our loud and vain repetitions, nor our much speaking. We must seek God through the Christ within, the invisible connection which we have within ourselves. When the Father within is worshipped in spirit and truth, he hears the calls of that soul which sincerely opens to him. The one who makes the connection with the Father in secret will feel the power flowing through him as the fulfillment of every desire. For he that sees the Father in the secret place of his own soul and there abides, him the Father will reward openly. How often Jesus disclosed his individual contact with the Father. See how he constantly held himself in conscious communication with God within. See how he talked with him as though he were personally present. See how powerful this secret inner relation made him. He recognized that God does not speak in the fire, the earthquake, or the great wind, but in the still small voice deep in our own souls. When man learns this, he will become poised. He will learn to think things through. Old ideas will drop away, new ideas will be adjusted. He will soon find the ease and efficiency of system. He will learn at last to take all the questions that perplex him into his silent hour. There he may not solve them, but he will become familiar with them. Then he will not need to go hurrying and battling through the day and feel that his purpose has been defeated. If man would come to know the greater stranger himself, let him enter his own closet and shut the door. There he will find his most dangerous enemy, and there will he learn to master him. He will find his true self. There will he find his truest friend, his wisest teacher, his safest advisor, himself. There will he find the altar upon which God is the undying fire, source of all goodness, all strength, all power, himself. He will know that God is in the deepest part of the silence. He will find that within himself abides the Holy of Holies. He will feel and know that his every desire is in God's mind and is, therefore, God's desire. He will feel and know the closeness of the relationship of God and man, the Father and the Son. He will realize that only in consciousness has there been any separation of these which have seemed two. Only in consciousness has there been any separation of these. Gosh, is that deep? Because, it says that, you are that. You are that. And we are that. And so if we are that, that would be the only place that it would register that there's the two from the middle, from the bridge, right? From the two, from the point where it's being the two are being bridged, which create the triplicity, which actually are just one, like body, mind, and soul, so it's just one. It operates as one, just as the body, emotions, and mental, brain all operate as one. Just as the lower three operate as one, so does the higher operate as one. God fills both heaven and earth. It was this great revelation that came to Jacob in the silence. He had slept on the stone of materiality. In a great burst of divine illumination, he saw the outer is but the outpressing or expression of the image held within. So impressed was he by this that he called out, "Surely the Lord, or law, is in this place, the earth or body, and I knew it not. This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate to heaven." Man will realize, as Jacob did, that the real gate to heaven is through his own consciousness. What else could it be? And before we get to that point, I think we don't know what it is or could be. So there's just an unknowing. It's an level of ignorance. And it's natural because of evolution, as far as we understand, based on the theosophical viewpoint. It is this ladder of consciousness revealed in a vision to Jacob, which each of us must climb before we can enter that silent secret place of the Most High and find that we are in the very center of every created thing, one with all things visible and invisible, and of the omnipresence. In Jacob's vision, he was shown the ladder reaching from earth to heaven. He saw the angels of God descending and ascending upon it, God's ideas descending from spirit to form and ascending again. It was the same revelation that came to Jesus when the heavens were opened unto him, and he saw the wonderful law of expression whereby ideas conceived in a divine mind come forth into expression and manifest in form. So perfectly was this law of expression revealed to the master that at once he saw all form may be transformed or changed in form through a change of consciousness in regard to it. His first temptation was to change the form of stones to that of bread to satisfy personal hunger. But with the revelation of this law of expression came the true understanding that stones, as well as all other visible forms, have come forth from the universal mind, substance, God, and are in themselves true expressions of divine mind. And all things desired, not formed, are still in this universal mind substance, ready to be created and brought forth to fill every desire. Thus, the need for bread but showed that the substance with which to create bread or any other needed thing is at hand without limitation, and bread can be created from this substance just as well as stones can be created therefrom. Every good desire man has is God's desire. Therefore, there is an unlimited supply of the universal God substance all about us to fill every desire. All we need to do is to learn to use what God has already created for us, and this he wills to have us do, that we may be free from every limitation and thus be abundantly free. And that's when Jesus said, life more abundantly, right? So when Jesus said, "I am the door," he meant that the I am in each soul is the door through which the life, power, and substance of the great I am, which is God, comes forth into expression through the individual. This I am has but one mode of expression, and that is through idea, thought, word, and act. This I am God being, which is power, substance, intelligence, is given form by consciousness. And for this reason, the master said, "According to your faith be it unto you, and all things are possible to them that believe." Now we see that God is within the soul as power, substance, and intelligence, or in spiritual terms, wisdom, love, and truth. the consciousness which is in the infinite mind of God and in man is determined by the concept or belief that is held in mind. It is the belief in separation from spirit that has caused our forms to age and die. When we see that spirit is all and that form is constantly being expressed from spirit, then shall we understand that that which is born of our or brought out of spirit is spirit. See, there's this is why we're reading this book. There are a lot of hidden gems in here. And it's coming from, a pretty high level of consciousness as it's being explained to us by the masters. And we could probably say that the master DK and Moria and Kudhumi and the others were certainly familiar with this going on in these books. So the next great truth to be revealed through his consciousness is that each individual, being a concept of the divine mind, is held in that mind as a perfect idea. Not one of us has to conceive himself. We have been perfectly conceived and are always held in the perfect mind of God as perfect beings. By having this realization brought to our consciousness, we can contact the divine mind and so reconceive what God has already conceived for us. This is some deep stuff here, friends. This is what Jesus called being born again. It is the great gift the silence has to offer. For by contacting the God mind, we can think with God mind and know ourselves as we are in reality. Rather than as we thought ourselves to be. And I was just saying this yesterday. So this is a pretty deep concept here, this process of being born again. And it's kind of like we were looking at things the wrong way. It's just we were just the distinction between the lower and the higher becomes very clear at some point. And then because you've seen the fading off of the lower, and because you recognize that you're now thinking in a higher way, and the confusion that the world brings with it fades off, and you begin to see through even more, and much more clearly. Because again, if we look at the sutras, we're looking back to the cause, not this world of effects. So the things that we've been mistaken about what we're seeing happen here. That we have any part in these things or this and that, and we're doing these things in the way that we think we are. And we think we have a grasp of what's actually going on here, when it appears from where I sit now, we had no idea what was going on. And anyway, Even when we thought we had an idea of what was going on, we still did not have an idea of what was going on. And that's very humbling, because now we recognize that we just don't have any idea, and we use the mind, where we search for the meaning and the cause and the more of the significance, and symbology behind these things, but there's still no, real knowing, like something. It's until you do. And yeah. So it is the great gift the silence has to offer us. For by contacting the God mind, we can think with the God mind and know ourselves as we are in reality, rather than as we thought ourselves to be. We contact God mind through true thought, and so bring forth a true expression, whereas in the past, perhaps, through untrue thought, we have brought forth an untrue expression. But whether the form be perfect or imperfect, the being of the form is perfect God power, substance, and intelligence. It is not the being of the form that we wish to change, but the form that being has assumed. This is to be done through the renewing of the mind, or through the change from the imperfect to the perfect concept, from the thought of man to the thought of God. How important then to find God, to contact him, to be one with him, and to bring him forth into expression. How equally important is the silence, or the stilling of the personal mind, that the God mind in all its splendor may illumine the consciousness. When it does, and we shall understand how the Son of Righteousness, righteousness, shall rise with healing in his wings. The mind of God floods consciousness as sunshine floods a darkened room. The infusion of the universal mind into the personal mind is like the entrance of the vastness of the outside air into the impurity of that which has long been held in some close compartment. It stands alone, supreme, and we realize that we are to build but one temple. The temple of the living God is the blending of the greater with the lesser, through which the lesser becomes one with the greater. The impurity was caused by the separation of the lesser from the greater. The purity is caused by their union. So there's a separation and then the union, so that no longer is there a greater and a lesser, but just the one good, whole, pure air. And Christ and Jesus made the two into one, right? Even so must we know that God is one, and all things visible and invisible are one with him. It is separation from him that has caused sin, sickness, poverty, and death. It is union with him that causes one to become a whole being, or to become conscious of being whole. The separation from unity is the descent of the angels on the ladder of consciousness. The return to unity is the ascent of the angels upon the ladder. The descent is good, for unity then becomes expressed in diversity, but in diversity there need be no concept of separation. That which is diversity has been misconceived from the personal or external viewpoint to be separation. The great work for each soul is to lift the personal viewpoint to such heights in consciousness that it becomes one with the whole. When all can meet with one accord in one place, that place in consciousness where it is understood that all things visible and invisible have their origin in the one God, then we stand upon the Mount of Transfiguration. At first we see Jesus, and with him Moses and Elijah, or Elias, or law and prophecy, and the Christ, power within man to know God, and we think to build 3 temples, but the deeper meaning comes. We are given to realize the immortality of man, to know that divinity is never lost, that divine man is deathless, eternal. Then Moses, the law, and Elias, the prophecy, disappear, and the Christ stands alone, supreme. We realize that we have to build but one temple, the temple of the living God within our very selves. Then the Holy Spirit fills the consciousness, and the sense of delusions of sin, sickness, poverty, and death become no more. This is the great purpose of the silence. This temple from which you may chip a piece, and the scar will be instantly healed, but typifies the temple of our body, of which Jesus spoke, the temple not made by hands, eternal in the heavens, which we are to bring forth here on earth. I see why we're reading this book now. Yeah, whose I see. There's good reason we're reading this book. It's really providing the teaching with the experience, and it's bringing it into the present, both things, the teaching and the expression. Let's go on to chapter 7 here. Thursday morning, the sun rose clear and beautiful, but instead of pushing on as we had expected, we were all fearful. We were told that we would wait where we were until the trails had dried and the rivers had receded so we could proceed more comfortably. We were all fearful lest our provisions should be exhausted, and one of our party voiced this fear. Emil, who had charge of the whole outfit, came to us and said, "You need not fear. Does not God take care of all his creatures, both great and small? And are we not his creatures?" There's a little bit, what we're seeing here is a little lack of faith that had already been shown that there's no fear needed to be around these masters when you're around them. There is no fear. They've already proven that that's unnecessary. So you will see that, and we can see their reaction here is so relaxed and non-judgmental. It's like they know that there's going to be this fear anyway, even though there's no need, and this lack of faith, even though there's no need for it. There's no emotion involved in it. You will see that here I have a few kernels of corn or corn seed. I will plant them. By this act, I have definitely said that I want corn. I have formed corn in my mind. I have fulfilled the law, and in due season it will come forth. Is it necessary for us to wait await the long, arduous process that nature in her slow growth and unfoldment will take in order to grow corn? If so, we would be obliged to wait a long, hard time to obtain it. Why not use a higher and more perfect law given us by the Father to produce it? All that is required is to become quiet and visualize or idealize corn. We have corn cured, ready for use. If you doubt it, you can gather it, grind it into meal, then make it into bread. There before us was corn grown and cured so that we did gather it and grind it and afterwards made it into bread. Then Emil went on to say, this you have seen and believed, but why not use a more perfect law and bring forth a more perfect thing, or exactly what you want, bread? You will see by using this more perfect, or as you would say, more subtle law, I am able to bring forth exactly what I need, bread. And as we stood there, spellbound, a large loaf of bread was in his hand. Nor did the supply stop until there were 40 loaves upon the table before us, placed there apparently by Emil himself. He remarked, you see, there is sufficient for all. If not sufficient, more can be supplied until there is enough to spare. We all ate the bread and pronounced it good. Emil continued, when Jesus at Galilee asked Philip, when shall we buy bread? He did this to try him, for within himself he knew full well there was no necessity to buy the bread needed to feed the assembled multitude, nor to secure it through material market then in existence. He saw the opportunity to prove to his disciples the power of bread leavened or increased by the Spirit. How often man in the mortal concept thinks as did Philip. He was calculating as human consciousness is calculating today from the visible supply on hand, thinking he had only so much bread or so much supply or so much money with which to buy. Jesus recognized that the one in Christ consciousness knows no limitation. He then, in Christ consciousness, looked to God as the source and creator of all and gave thanks for the power and substance right at hand to fill every want. He then broke and distributed through his disciples to those in outer need until the need was supplied, and there remained 12 baskets over. Jesus never depended on the oversupply of another to fill his need, nor the need of another. But he taught that our supply is right at hand in universal substance, where all supply exists, and all we need to do is to create it or bring it forth. Just so Elisha multiplied the widow's oil. He did not apply to someone having an overabundance of oil. For had he done this, the supply would have been limited. He contacted the universal, and the only limit to the supply was that all the vessels were filled. The supply could have flowed on until this day had there been vessels to receive it. This is not hypnotism. None of you feel that you are in a way under a hypnotic spell. Let me say that the only hypnotism is the self-hypnotism of believing that each and every one cannot do the perfect works of God and create the desired condition or thing. For is not the need itself the desire to create? Instead of unfolding and creating as God wills us to create, you fold up in your little shells and say, I can't, and you hypnotize yourselves into actually believing that you are separate entities apart from God. You simply fall short of your perfect creation or expression. You do not let God express perfectly through you as it is his desire to do. Did not Jesus, the great master, say, the works that I do, you shall do also, and greater works than these shall you do? Was it not Jesus' true mission here on earth to show that we, as sons of God, or man in his true estate, can create as perfectly and as harmoniously as God does? When Jesus commanded the blind man to bathe his eyes in the pool of Siloam, was not this intended to open the eyes of all? All were to see that Jesus was sent by the Father to show us that the Father intended us to create exactly as he creates. All are to do the perfect work as Jesus did by recognizing the Christ in himself and in all. I can go one step further. This loaf I just received and held in my hand is consumed as though burned by fire. What happened? I misused the perfect law that brought forth my conception and consumed that which I brought forth. Because of my misuse or not using rightly or righteously, the perfect law, which is as exact as music or mathematics or any other so-called natural law. If I persisted in the misuse of the perfect law, it would consume not only that which I create, but would consume me, the creator. Is the bread really destroyed? We will admit the form is changed, for in the place of the loaf, we have a small amount of dust or ashes. Has it not in reality been returned to the universal substance from which it sprang? Is it not now in unmanifest form, waiting to be brought again into manifestation? Is this not the way with all forms that go from our sight, either by fire or decay or in any other way? Do they not return to the universal substance, God, from which they sprang? Is this not the meaning of what descends from heaven must descend into heaven? A short time ago, you saw ice formed without any apparent cause, as you perhaps think of it. Let me say that that is the same as creating the bread. I can use the law to obtain ice as well as bread, just as long as I use either as a benefit to mankind, or as long as I am working in living accord with the law, or expressing as God wishes all to express. It is good for all to make bread or ice or any and all things desired, and all must press on to the stage at which they can do these things. Can you not see that by using the highest law, the absolute law of God, you may bring forth that which you need or conceive in mind as your highest ideal, and thus please God more fully by manifesting more fully, knowing as Jesus did that we are perfect sons of God? Does not this suggest freedom from commercial bondage as well as all other bondage? As I see it, the commercial bondage will, in a few years, become the greatest bondage of all. And how true this is here, right? If it goes on at the rate it is now progressing, it will dominate man's soul and body, and it cannot do otherwise than consume itself and those that are interested in it. There is no question but that the first inception of commercialism was on high spiritual plane, but materialism was allowed to creep in until the very power used to create it is the power that will consume. Just as the very power used to create will always consume if not used rightly. It is not the pressing of commercialism and limitations upon us, crowding us on to see that we must cover up over or overcome these conditions. Is not this done by simply realizing that we are to do the perfect works of God to raise our consciousness to the Christ consciousness? Is not this what Jesus taught us here on earth? Does not his whole life exemplify this? My dear brothers, do you not see that in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God? At this time, everything to be formed later was in unmanifest form and universal mind substance, or as expressed by some in chaos. This word in the original was actuality. This word, chaos, is misinterpreted to mean a turbulent or warring state instead of the deep spiritual state of actuality, always awaiting a definite creative spoken word through which it can spring forth into manifest form. When God principle desired to bring forth the world out of universal mind substance, God was quiet and contemplative or contemplative. In other words, God saw an ideal world. He held in mind that substance of which the world was to be formed a sufficient time to lower its vibration. He held in mind that substance of which the world was to be formed a sufficient time to lower its vibration. Then he spoke the word, and the world was formed. Or, as we might say, God visualized a mental pattern or mold into which could flow the substance needed to make the world, and it came forth a perfect form built upon the pattern which was held in consciousness. All these things might have been thought of by God, infinite power. He might have wished during an indefinite time that they were formed and made visible. Had not the definite spoken word been put forth into formless ether, had not the definite spoken word been put forth into the formless ether, nothing would have been created or brought forth into visible form. In order to establish invisible results, the thought and desires of even an infinite omnipotent creator, and bring orderly forms out of actuality, it took the definite positive, let there be, so must we take the definite step. God is holding the ideal perfect world in mind in every detail, and it is bound to come forth as a heaven or perfect home where all his children, all his creatures, and all his creations may dwell in peace and harmony. This is the perfect world that God saw in the beginning, and the one he is thinking into existence right now, and the time of its manifestation lies in our acceptance of it. When we can come to the one place and know that we are all one man, and know that we are all members of God's body, and as much as one member of our body is part of the whole body, then we are in and of God's kingdom, heaven here on earth now. To make this manifest, realize that there is nothing material in heaven. All is spiritual. Realize that heaven is a perfect state of consciousness, a perfect world here on earth now, and all we need to do is accept it. It is here all about us, awaiting for us to open the inner eye. Through that eye, our body shall be made light, the light which is neither of the sun nor the moon, but of the Father. And the Father is right here in the very innermost part of our being. We must sufficiently realize that there is nothing material, that all is spiritual. Then we must think of that wonderful God-given spiritual world, which is right here now, if we can realize it. Do not you see that God created all in this way? Did not God first become quiet and contemplative and see the light? Then he said, let there be light, and it was so. And in the same way, he said, let there be a firmament, and it was so. And likewise with other creations, he held each form or ideal steadfast in consciousness, then spoke the word, the ideal was brought forth. Just so with man, God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and give him dominion over all. God, all good, created all things good. Man was the greatest and last, with full dominion over all. When man saw only good, Then man saw only good, and all was good until man separated himself from God and saw duality, or two. Then he, by his thought, created two, one good and the other the opposite. For if there were two, they would be opposite, good and evil. Thus, evil came through man's perfect power to express or bring forth that which he gazed upon. If man had not seen evil, evil would have been given no power of expression. Only the good would have been expressed, and we would be as perfect as God sees us today. Would not heaven always have been on earth as God sees it, and as we must all see it to make it manifest? Jesus had a perfect right to say that he came from heaven, for did not all come from heaven, the great universal mind substance? Since man was created in the image and likeness of God, did not God give man the power to create exactly as he creates? And does not God expect man to use that power as freely as he uses it? And in exactly the same way, by first perceiving the need, then conceiving the good, the ideal in which to fill the mold that we hold in consciousness, and which is to be filled from the universal mind substance, then sending forth the word that it is filled, that it is so, and it is good. Jesus, when he was crucified, gave his flesh the outer, what we see of the body, to prove that there is really a deeper or spiritual body, and that is the spiritual body that he manifested when he came forth from the tomb. This is the body of which he spoke when he said, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." He did this to show us we have the same spiritual body, and that we can do all the works he did. There's no question that if Jesus had wished to do so, he could have saved himself. There is no doubt but that he saw there was a great change taking place in his body. He also saw that those about him were not able to see that they also could bring forth the spiritual body as he was attempting to have them see. They still looked to the personal, and he saw that if he brought forth the spiritual body without some decided change, the people would not be able to discern between the material and the spiritual. So he adopted the way of the crucifixion to bring about the change. Truly is not this the Christ in man, which the greater Master Jesus, whom we all love and reverence, came to show? Did he not unfold his life here on earth to show us the perfect way to God? Can we do other than love this perfect ideal way when we once see it, whether it be planting seed, making bread, or doing the 1,000,001 things necessary to human existence? Are not these facts mere lessons carrying us on to our unfoldment? Someday we are to realize that we are truly sons of God, not servants, that as sons we can and do have all that the Father has, and that we can use it just as freely as our Father does. I admit this takes a mighty faith at first, one that usually must be taken step by step and must be practiced faithfully like music or mathematics until we come to the place of knowing. Then we are grandly, beautifully free. So, and well, this is important here because here it's admitted that it does take, it goes step by step. So we know that's to be true. He's not saying, just do this right now, and why aren't you doing it? That's not how that goes. It takes faith, that it requires faith at first, and it requires a step-by-step undertaking, in which we've seen in the books and in the Yoga Sutras we just did. Could there be a better, truer example of this life than that of Jesus? Can you not recognize the power that is in his name, Jesus, the name, the Christ made manifest, or God manifesting through the flesh man? Jesus came to the place where he relied wholly upon his deep knowledge or understanding of God, and this is how he did his mighty works. He did not rely upon his own willpower or upon strong concentrated thoughts. Neither must we rely upon our own will, power, nor strong concentrated thoughts, but upon the will of God. It is not my will, but thine, O God, be done. Will to do the will of God. Do you not think that Jesus willed in all things to do the will of God, or to do what God willed him to do? You will note that very often Jesus is referred to as going into a high mountain. Whether he physically ascended a high mountain or not, I do not know. This I do know, that we must all ascend to the heights, the very highest in consciousness, to receive our illumination. This height means the very top of the head, and there, if the faculty is not developed, we must develop it by spiritual thoughts. Okay, so now we're getting even deeper. We know that we have to be raised up, right? And this is not the path of the mystic. This is the path of the this is not the path of the heart. This is the path of the head. It's the occult path. This is the path of service, essentially. I'll say. Okay, well, here we go. Then from the heart, the love center, we must let love flow forth to balance all. And when this is done, the Christ is revealed. The Son of Man perceives that he is the Son of God, the only begotten Son, in whom the Father is well pleased. Then with constant love, we must realize this for all. Just stop and think deeply for a moment and realize the countless number of the grains of sand of the seashore, the countless number of drops of water that go to make up the waters of the earth, the countless number of life forms in the waters of the earth. Then realize the countless number of rock particles that are contained in the whole earth, countless number of trees, plants, flowers, and shrubs upon the earth, and countless number of forms of animal life upon the earth. Realize that all are the outpicturing of the ideal held in the great universal mind of God, that they all contain the one life, the life of God. Then think of the countless number of souls born upon this earth. Then realize that each soul is a perfect pictured ideal image of God as God sees himself, that each soul is given the same power, expression, and dominion over all that God himself has. Do not think that God wills or wishes man to unfold these godlike or God-given qualities and to do the works that God does through the inheritance given man by the Father, the one great universal mind in all, through all, and above all. Then realize that each person is an expression or pressing out from the unseen, the spirit, into visible form, or form through which God loves to express. When we can realize and accept this, we can truly say, as Jesus did, behold, a Christ is here. It is in this way that he attained his mastery over the worldly or flesh self. He recognized, claimed, and accepted his divinity, then lived the life just as we must do. All right, we're going to do chapter 8 as well. After a delay of 8 days, we broke camp on Monday morning and proceeded on our way. The afternoon of the third day out, we came to the bank of a larger river. The stream was about 2,000 feet wide. That's pretty big. Running bank full, and the current was at least 10 miles per hour. That's impressive. That this is no joke. We were told that this stream in ordinary times could be crossed at this place without any inconvenience. We decided to camp until morning and observe the rise and fall of the water. We were informed that we would be able to cross by a bridge further upstream, but to reach this bridge would necessitate a detour of at least 4 days hard travel. We felt that if the water was receding, it would be better to wait a few days rather than undertake the long detour. It had been demonstrated to us that we would need not take any thought as to our provisions, or from the day already referred to, when our provisions were exhausted, the whole company, consisting of over 300 persons, had been supplied with an abundance of provisions from the invisible, as we call it. The supply was maintained for 64 days until we returned to the village from which we started. Thus far, none of us had any idea of the true significance or meaning of the things we were experiencing. Neither were we able to see that these things were performed by a definite law, a law that all can use. When we were assembled for breakfast the next morning, we found 5 strangers in camp. They were introduced, and it was mentioned that they were from a party that was camped on the other side of the stream and were returning from a village of our destination. Return from the village of our destination. We thought very little of it as of this at the time, as we naturally supposed they found a boat and had crossed in it. One of our party said, "If these people have a boat, why cannot we use it and cross the stream?" I think all of us saw this as a way out of our difficulty, but we were told that there was no boat, as the crossing was not thought to be of sufficient importance to maintain one. After finishing breakfast that morning, we were all assembled on the bank of the stream. We noticed that Emil, Jast, and Nepro, with 4 others of our party, were talking with the 5 strangers. Jast came to us and they said they would like to cross with the others to the camp on the other side of the stream, as they had decided to wait until the next morning to see if the water showed signs of receding. Of course, our curiosity was aroused, and we thought it rather foolhardy to attempt to swim a stream as swift as the one before us, just to make a friendly call upon a neighbor. We felt that swimming was the only way the crossing could be accomplished. When Jastri joined the group, the 12, fully dressed, walked to the bank of the stream and with the utmost composure stepped on the water, not into it. I never shall forget my feelings as I saw each of those 12 men step from solid ground upon the running water. I held my breath, expected, of course, to see them plunge beneath and disappear. I found afterwards that that was the thought of all our party. At the time, I think each of us held his breath until they were all past midstream. So astonished were we to see that those 12 men, walking calmly across the surface of the stream without the least inconvenience, and not sinking below the soles of their sandals. They stepped from the water to the farther bank. I felt that tons of weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I believe this was the feeling of every one of our party, judging from the signs of relief, the sighs of relief, as the last man stepped ashore. It certainly was an experience that words fail to describe. The 7 belonging to our party returned for lunch. While the excitement was not so intense at the second crossing, every one of us breathed more freely when the 7 were safe ashore again. Not one of our party had left the bank of the stream that forenoon. There was very little discussion regarding what we had witnessed, so engrossed were we with our own thoughts. The second day, the company was toiling up the steep side of a mountain, the hot sun pouring down upon us, when our chief, who had said but little during the last 2 days, suddenly remarked, "Boys, why is it that man is obliged to crawl and grovel over this earth?" We answered in chorus that he had voiced our thoughts exactly. We went on to say, "How is it, if a few are able to do the things that we have seen accomplished, that all men cannot accomplish the same things? How is it that man is content to crawl, and not only content to crawl, but is obliged to do so? If man was given dominion over all things, he was certainly given power to fly above the birds. If this is dominion, if this is his dominion, why has he not asserted this dominion long ago? The fault must certainly be in man's own mind. This must all have come about by man's own mortal concept of himself. He has only been able in his own mind to see himself crawling, thus he has only been able to crawl." Then Jas took up the thought and said, "You're perfectly right. It is all in man's consciousness. He is limited or unlimited, bound or free, just as he thinks. Do you think that the men you saw walk across the stream yesterday to save themselves the convenience of this trip are in any way special creations any more than you are? No, they are not created in any way different from you. They do not have one atom more power than you are created with. They have, by the right use of their thought forces, developed their God-given power. The things you have seen are accomplished in accord with definite law, and every human being can use the law if he will." All right, I'm gonna call it there for today, but we will pick back up here tomorrow. All right, have a good one.